Assessing Mental Capacity, Part 2. In the second part of this podcast on assessing mental capacity, we'll explore the second stage of the test and what you need to show to be protected for your capacity assessment. If you've not yet listened to Part 1, it's recommended that you listen to it before this part. What does the Act mean by inability to make a decision? This is the second stage of the two-stage test. Under the Act, a person is unable to make a particular decision at the relevant time if she cannot do any one of these four things. Number 1. Understand information relevant to the decision. Number 2. Retain that information in her mind long enough to make the decision. Number 3. Use or weigh that information as part of the process at arriving at a decision. And number 4. Communicate a decision by talking, using sign language, or any other means. In order to satisfy the second stage of the test, it's enough if she is unable to do any one of these four things. The impairment or disturbance you have identified in Stage 1 must also be the cause of the inability to make the decision. If there is more than one possible cause, then the impairment or disturbance must be the effective or material cause. What must a person be able to understand? It's not necessary for a person to be able to understand or comprehend every detail about the decision in question. Instead, the question is whether she can comprehend the salient details relevant to that decision. In terms of your assessment, this has the effect of not setting the bar too high. It's also why it's very important for you to be clear about the particular decision you want the person to make, so that you can share information that is relevant to the decision. This will avoid overwhelming the person with irrelevant information. Do not assess a person's understanding before you have shared relevant information about the decision with her. Make every effort to give information in a way that is most appropriate to help her understand. When assessing a person's ability to understand relevant information, give information in a way that she will best understand, taking into account her circumstances, needs, and any cultural or religious factors that might influence the way information is presented or understood. Ask yourself whether she has a general understanding of the nature of decision she is being asked to make, why she needs to make it, and the likely consequences of making or not making the decision. If she is unable to understand information relevant to the decision, can you show how you came to this conclusion? Why must a person be able to retain information? We all have to retain information in order to use it to make a decision. Remember, a person need only retain information long enough to make the decision in question. For some decisions, this may be a short period of time. For others, it may need to be retained for longer. When assessing a person's ability to retain relevant information, use whatever strategies you think will help her retain relevant information. For example, notebooks, photographs, or posters, and check her retention during your assessment. Check her retention periodically. If she is able to retain relevant information only for a short period of time, it does not prevent her from being regarded as being able to make the decision. It's also okay to ask the same question more than once to test her retention. Why must a person be able to use or weigh information? This is about the person's capacity to engage in the decision-making process, to be able to see the various parts of the argument and to relate these one to another. For example, someone may understand relevant information, but an impairment or a disturbance may stop her from using it. Or an impairment or disturbance could also lead someone towards a specific decision without really understanding or using the information she has been given. When assessing a person's ability to use or weigh relevant information, ask yourself two questions. First, how does the person use or weigh relevant information as part of the process of arriving at a decision? Remember, she only needs to be able to show you that she can weigh the salient details. Second, if there are alternative options, how does she weigh the likely consequences of each choice, including the consequences of making no decision at all? To take a simple example, Imagine someone in residential care who tells you she doesn't like the noise there or the food. If we explore a little more deeply, what she might really be saying is that she prefers the peace and quiet, or the opportunity to cook her own food at home. In other words, she is using or weighing the alternatives and telling you what she prefers. What level of communication is needed? Sometimes there is no way for a person to communicate. For example, if a person is unconscious or in a coma. If a person cannot communicate her decision in any way at all, the Act says that she should be treated as if she is unable to make that decision. However, the mere blink of an eye or squeeze of a hand to say yes or no is enough to show that she can communicate. Before deciding this, you must take all possible steps to help a person to communicate her decision. This is the second principle. You might need to involve a speech and language therapist or a specialist in non-verbal communication. It's also worth mentioning that being unable and being unwilling to communicate a decision are two very different things. What if a person makes a decision that you think is unwise? If you listen to the podcast about the third principle, unwise decisions, you might remember that a person is not to be treated as unable to make a decision merely because she makes an unwise decision. It's important to recognize the difference between an unwise decision based upon a lack of understanding of risks or an inability to weigh information about the decision, and one that is based merely upon a difference in values. Only the former should form part of your capacity assessment. If the person makes a decision that you think is unwise, explore how she has reached this decision. What has she taken into account to arrive at her decision? This will help you to understand whether the decision simply reflects a difference in values. Must the impairment or disturbance be the cause of a person's inability to make a decision? We touched upon this important point earlier. The answer is yes, and this is a very important link. A person's underlying impairment or disturbance must be the cause of her inability to make the particular decision at that time. It is important that your assessment records clearly state that you consider the person's impairment or disturbance in the functioning of her mind or brain is the cause of her inability to make the decision in question. What are the features of a good capacity assessment? There are many, but we can summarize these. First, reflect upon the 5 principles and always start by assuming a person over 16 years of age has capacity to make the decision. Second, the clearer you are about the decision you are asking the person to make and the information that you think is relevant to it, the clearer she will feel. Third, provide the person with help and support to make her own decision. This is because she is not to be treated as being unable to make a decision unless all possible and appropriate steps to help her to do so have been taken without success. Importantly, record the efforts you have taken to promote her ability to make her own decision. Fourth, if the person makes a decision that you think is unwise, consider carefully whether this is the result of an inability to make the decision or simply a difference in values. Fifth, provide the person with the salient details before assessing her capacity to understand and weigh these. If there are choices, provide her with realistic details of the choices available. Sixth, take a clean slate approach and avoid unjustified assumptions about the person's capacity. Your decision about capacity must not be based simply upon her age, appearance, condition, or any aspect of her behavior. Appearance refers to all aspects of physical appearance, including skin color, mode of dress, and any visible medical problems. Condition covers a range of factors including physical disabilities, learning disabilities, and temporary conditions, such as unconsciousness or the effects of alcohol or drug use. Finally, the record of your capacity assessment must include evidence of your conclusions in relation to the presence of an impairment or disturbance and whether this is temporary or permanent, her ability to understand, retain, and use or weigh relevant information, her ability to communicate her decision by any means possible. Your opinion that the impairment or disturbance is the cause of an inability to make the decision. Keep a good record of your capacity assessment, and this will protect you because it is evidence of your reasonable belief.